always, great to have you with us as we focus on development and leadership on our continent, Mother Africa. This week on the show, we focus on startups and the role of corporates in supporting the growth of young companies in Africa. We take a look at your views on the issues. And as always, we have Africa's top 10. You're watching the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm Julie Gichuru. Young people are a key demographic right across Africa, but very often they're simply sidelined in the economic development nexus. Tonight we take a look at the importance of startups and the role corporate players have in supporting their growth. We feature key corporates that will share their insights on fostering entrepreneurship and sharing ingredients of innovation. Our guests this week include Rolf Assis, General Manager, Philips, East Africa, Sam Gichuru, Director, NILAB, and Julie Gichuru. This discussion was shot during an interactive discussion on StartKENup held at the Dutch Embassy in Nairobi. It was moderated by Theodore Kluvas, who leads the project. Let's go straight to the session.
I sent a Facebook message to our Prime Minister, to our, Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is currently the Vice President of the European Union, Mr. Frans Timmermans, and I told him, this is what I want. I want to start an incubator inside the embassy. And I told him that I'm not expecting an answer. That was on the Friday night. So Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, I got an answer. Monday, I was at the ministry. A month later, I was in Athens, starting Orange Grove, the first ever incubator in an embassy. That was 4 years ago. Why at an embassy? I'll tell you. Embassies have two very important things that corporates don't do and other incubators don't have. They have a credibility. Meet me at an embassy instead of meet me at the coffee corner around the block over there somewhere. I mean, it's always, you're all dressed up because you come to an embassy. Okay? So I wanted to bring that, to bridge the gap between the connections of an embassy and the needs of an entrepreneur. How can startups and corporates walk alone? How can they collaborate?
My first point is going to be very simple. Here in Africa, and I want to contextualize as I discuss and really focus on the Kenya situation, we discuss formal and informal. My perspective, however, is that what we describe as the informal market actually is the norm, and therefore we need to turn this on the head. And this is why it's absolutely critical to say to the formal industries and the formal markets, the majority of people are outside your formal systems. When it comes to suppliers, when it comes to your supply chains, when it comes to the people that you're engaging with, when it comes to innovation, how are you incorporating these young minds, building capacity in what we call the informal area, which is actually the most dynamic area of all? I think for formal players, it's also really critical because there is a comfort in formality. There's a comfort in what they know. However, everything innovative comes from discomfort, and the world is being disrupted. If they ignore the informal, the startups, those that seem small and maybe irrelevant to them, they risk being overturned by events. And I think we're seeing what Uber has done. We're seeing what PayPal and other things are doing. Amazon is launching Amazon Go, which is going to change grocery shopping incredibly. Now, if the grocery stores paid attention to that, they might not in the next 3-4 years be relevant. But, so this is the risk, and this is why formal needs to pay keen attention and respect informal. And for informal, of course, they need to find relevance, they need to find markets, but I think even more important than all of that is professionalism they can learn from the formal.
Sam.
Startups are nimble. Make decisions in the evening at 5 o'clock, and in the morning somebody's already talking to the customers about the new feature. Corporates take a board, take a department, take resources. It takes 6 months. That collaboration by having a startup collaborate with a corporate means that the corporate can actually launch a new feature the next morning instead of waiting for 6 months by having a good joint venture with the startup, which means that they can use the startup for the research, for customer feedback, and things like that. And that's just one of it. And the best thing about a startup as well, within the same sector, is that when a startup builds a product, maybe in 2 weeks, we always go for 2 weeks, they can use the test bed data from a corporate. You can go to Unilever, you can go to KLM, you can go to Philips and say, can you give us some of your data on your customers or some of your data on your products, and then we'll use our software to get data feedback from that, and we'll be able to give you extremely good analytics based on what you built. So customers don't have, startups don't have customers, corporate have customers. They can build a product and use the database that the other people provide, especially on healthcare. And I'm pointing at Philips at this particular point. So those are the 2 ways I think startups can be very nimble in making decisions and working with corporates to help corporates get better insights on the data on their customers, and at the same time launch quick features and quick products very fast into the market without having to go through the processes.
Roelof, what do you think?
We as a corporate, as Philips, if we want to be relevant for the local market, so we need to create an ecosystem which is very important, down to the earth, really understanding what is the needs for the African market, and specifically here in Kenya. So we as corporate have fantastic research laboratories, we have innovations, we have incubators, kind of thing. So we as Philips said, we need to really make products and ideas relevant for the local market. So we started up an incubator, an innovation hub here in Kenya to really understand the local environment, to really innovate together with the ecosystem, being it a startup, being it an environment like iHub or Gearbox, but also with local NGOs, universities, to really make sure that we all work together in that environment to understand, to make sure that we create opportunities for entrepreneurs. We test our products, make available our network globally to the entrepreneurs as well as the startups, so that they also become relevant and going forward.
Successful collaboration between startups and corporates must go beyond financial deals. What's the motivation behind that product that has just been developed? Who is that person that is booming the market? So Sam, how do you think that we can take that collaboration beyond financial deals only?
Let's say financial is usually the most important, because corporates have got a lot of resources. They have a lot of capital. Startups don't have capital. But I want to give an example of a corporate like KLM or Philips as well, that is across the continent, and you're a startup. If you want to expand to the rest of Africa, you want to go to Ghana, Kigali, you need to register a company there. But you have a joint venture with a corporate, they can take you to their market in those places without you having to go through the legal processes of actually just signing up and registering a company and paying taxes in those individual companies, because you're dealing with only one client. Number two, which is I think it's extremely important, is production facility. Say you're doing shoes as a startup, or you're producing some kind of food, and you partner with Unilever or one of these other companies, and you need a production place. You can outsource that to them if you have a joint venture with them. And that will probably come with branding and PR and marketing, and that's extremely important for you as a startup. I think number three is something that I've experienced in my life, is the CEO to CEO mentorship. As a young CEO, I became a CEO at 23. I had no clue what I was doing. I still have no clue. I'm still just hustling through it. But every now and then I meet a CEO who's run a corporate, who has got has global expansion, who has got over 1,000 employees. And that's extremely important for you to understand how to deal with your burnout, your burn rate in your cash, your churn rate, all these things that you hear about on Bloomberg and on Forbes, and you have no idea what they mean. I think CEO to CEO mentorship is one of the most interesting bits for young startups to get.
Julie, what do you think? I mean, you've been around. You're doing some great stuff with startups. How do you think we can foster that?
So I actually am very skeptical about the financial aspect being heralded as the most important. I actually think it is important, but certainly not even on the top 3. And I think the greatest risk, and as an entrepreneur myself, you get access to finance, you get very excited, you think everything is working, and you go rolling, and you end up with obligations and debts, and you end up in trouble. So to me, the most important thing is the collaboration that builds the capacity, the understanding, the professionalism, the systems, and the structures of the startup. This is what a startup needs to do when it engages with a corporate, is learn all the best practices and try to adopt those that it can take and that it can use. I think that's absolutely critical. I think networks are very important. I think also in terms of focusing the way a startup thinks, because you might have an idea and think it's the most brilliant idea in the world, but maybe it needs to be tweaked and adjusted to serve the market need. Maybe the market you will end up serving is not the market you thought you would serve. But the corporate that actually has the clients would be able to give you the feedback and the information so that you can adjust yourself again and adapt your product to meet the needs of the market. So for me, I think what a startup needs to be ready to take from a corporate is knowledge, capacity, systems, and structures.
Roelof.
No, I think I fully agree with both my two panelists over here. It's not all about the money. The money is one aspect of it, which might help certain entrepreneurs to go to the next step. But for us, what we offer is indeed what Sam said, coaching, mentorship, to really make sure that we work on a one-to-one, work together to make things work. Yeah? And not just by having an idea and trying to launch it and fail. Because I think that's what we see quite often. What we see also very often is that many pilots and this kind of things are being tested by corporates, and they just remain pilots. They don't scale up. Yeah? So for us, it's very important to really use the ecosystem to, first of all, make sure that whatever idea comes to the market really makes sense for that market. Secondly, how do we scale it up? How do we bring it to the wider market beyond maybe Nairobi, beyond Kenya, beyond Africa? Because that's important. I'll give an example. We had a South African entrepreneur who invented a medical product which was a wind-up fetal monitor, really to using women and nurses in the field to diagnose their fetus during their pregnancy. They don't have power, so it was a wind-up fetal Doppler, which did not need the power. This gentleman had that fantastic idea, but he couldn't scale up. He had huge problems. How do I bring this product to the next level? How do I redevelop that product so that it becomes, first of all, labeled for all the quality assurance which are there, which we can bring to the table. We know what is needed in the rest of the world, but also what is needed to bring that to the market.
You got millions of customers and startups don't. So how can we support startups by saying powered by, supported by Philips in the packaging and get access to your customers? Maybe you can quickly respond to that.
So for us as a company, it's first of all identify together what products indeed are relevant so that we use them together and actually bring that product in, maybe even in the Philips portfolio, or bring it to the different incubator. We as Philips even have incubators which are small startup companies by themselves, where we can link the incubators together and actually bring a company by itself. So indeed, it's not a Philips product by itself, it could be a different product altogether. But we are using the ecosystem together from Philips Network and the incubator together and the entrepreneur to bring it to scale. That's what we do, but we are very critical in what kind of products, what kind of solutions are brought to the market.
Julie, you want to react on that?
Can I follow that up? It's an interesting question that's posed, and I would challenge a question like that and say, what relevance does that startup have for Philips, and why should Philips engage? And there's something that I really, I think we need to address in terms of entrepreneurship, innovation, startups in our environment. I call it the Woishe factor. Woishe is that feeling of awe, let's help somebody out.
Shame.
Oh yeah, shame. What can we do? This is not how business operates, and nobody's interested. So you have to have a quality product. You have to have a quality pitch when you go to Philips, and therefore they engage with you because there's benefit for them. And I think as long as startups remember that it's about the quality and the professionalism of what you bring to the table, you have a good chance of doing well. But then I would add, what I think needs to be added to this environment is advisory services and legal services for startups that can't afford them, so that they are able to really beef up when it comes to sitting at a table to negotiate with a big corporate like Philips or any other.
Yes, so two things. I really love what they said about the fact that, first of all, as a startup, you have to bring value to a corporate. I have seen very good collaboration between startups and corporates, and one of the most recent one we did with, and this is Development Aid, United Nations Population Fund, where they funded 4 startups, and out of those 4 startups, in 4 months, 120 days, were able to impact 87,000 people. From building a Siri for healthcare, where people could question a a series on healthcare issues, on their sexuality issues, to producing very good content, to having a gamified solution that interacted with the users to teach them how to respond in issues of sexuality and sexual abuse, and also Elimu, which is teaching deaf people issues of sexuality again, and how to prevent themselves from getting diseases, getting pregnant, and issues of abortions, using videos for the deaf community. And that has just been in 120 days. I think more corporates can actually work with startups to produce such kind of solutions.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
I wanted to ask either Julie, Naira, or Philip, when is the right time for a big corporate, if you are a startup, to sell off? Because I've seen recently 7Cs Technology, Toyota Tusho Corporation has bought for around 3.6 billion Kenyan shillings. There are several other startups like Jabopi who are doing very well. And maybe Alibaba Group in China can decide to buy. When is the right time to sell off?
My name is Laura. I'm one of the co-founders of Pego Energy. We're making pay-per-use cooking energy available in informal settlements. So I'm wondering, what do you really look for in a partner? What kind of companies do you want to stand up? What kind of people do you want to approach you after the session? And can you describe that in more detail? What are you really looking for, particularly for Philips in Kenya?
My question is to Sam Gichuru. My name is George Kosimbei from Kenyatta University. From your experience, I don't know whether design thinking and lean startup trained to our young people will be able to improve some of the challenges that you're raising in terms of them coming to you and maybe they don't have anything to offer. That's just a direct question.
What's the right time to sell? That's a really good question. So I've been an entrepreneur for many years alongside my husband, and we've been through ups and downs. We've been at points where you don't know how you're going to pay your staff at the end of the month. You can't sleep all night because you're just trying to figure out how to get the salaries out, We've been there. We've been at the point where, you're sitting with banks trying to reorganize. My best advice is, and it's a challenge, especially if you have to pay license fees for certain, try not to sell when you are desperate. Does that make sense? Try as much as possible, whether you're knocking on your parents' door, asking for a loan, asking your friends, look, come on, just give me some assistance to get yourself through the most difficult times, so that when you're sitting at that negotiation table, you are not in dire straits. That's the best piece of advice I can give. And I hope, I hope it works for you.
So let's look at it this way. You're building a business. There are only two reasons you should be building a business, or three reasons. One, it's a luxury business or leisure business. You just mom and pop shop, so you get to get your salary for the next 50 years, you retire, you give it to your children. Or you want to exit. A proper exit was like a WhatsApp exit for $18 billion on Facebook. You exit, you sell, and you either join Facebook or you go and take holidays for the rest of your life. The third one is IPO. And you've seen Facebook IPO, LinkedIn IPO, you've seen local companies IPO, you've seen the GEMS market getting into play. So those are the only three things you're doing business for. When is the right time to sell? Again, don't sell when you're desperate. As Julie has said, don't do that. It's very unpredictable. You may choose not to sell, and then your valuation just goes down. I will just give one advice, give it 2 minutes. Cool. Figure out what is your total addressable market, everybody who could buy your product, and if you have not reached them, keep selling to them. Otherwise, if you've reached all of them and Philips comes over and says, you know what, we can integrate this into another existing product for a whole new segment of a market, then sell it.
Roelof?
Yeah. Let me also come back to one of the previous questions as well on that one. For us as a company, we need to remain relevant. So innovation is for us key. We cannot stop innovating our company from the products and ideas, but also be bold in when do we want to refocus in our business. What do we really want to do? Probably you've seen it in this year. Philips are refocusing themselves this year into becoming a full health and well-being company. So we're splitting off the lighting business from the company itself with really deliberate kind of focus, whereby we can reinvest more into the healthcare business and stand by itself with a separate company for lighting as well, to really make sure what is our core business. So we keep on asking ourselves the questions continuously, not only as a global level, but also an Africa level. What drives us? What is important for us in the Africa level? What makes it relevant over here? And that comes to also your question, Lara, as well. What are we looking for in Africa, or in this case, Kenya as well? If we are in the health and well-being space, we can invest in all kind of products which we find nice, but we don't do it. Yeah? We do not want to be investing in a product or an idea which is not relevant for our company. Yeah? It has to be 100% relevant for us. We're really looking in the business case, we really look in the product, and we say, okay, only when the product makes sense, then we bring it aboard, we reinvest in it, we are working together to make it a viable product itself.
There was a question of the ease of doing business, and I'd like to hear that also from a global perspective. What is the ease of doing business as a foreigner in this country, setting up a company and all of that? But for a local startup, it's better than it was 5 years ago. It was better than it was 10 years ago. And I know KEPSA drives this conversation a lot with the World Bank. And so I wish somebody from KEPSA was here to actually answer that question. But there are 3 areas. One, how fast do you register a business? How fast can you get your business registered as a startup? That for us has improved greatly, so it has become better. 2, question of tax. We've been asking for tax rebates. We want startups not to pay taxes for the first 2 years until they probably start showing some revenue. Otherwise, the burden of tax and administration costs is too much on a company that's trying to bring a new product into the market. It's quite challenging on that. Access to credit. Can we be rated differently other than how the global credit ratings happen? Because now we see M-Pesa, I'm sure it works for us as young entrepreneurs, especially in the informal sector. It helps you get a better credit facility. So that has improved. But before, I can tell you, when I started business, I bought my first furniture cash. I bought my first car cash. I mean, everything I did was cash, which meant I had to sign a contract with the customer, get the 50% payment, and then start. So I used customer money, and it was quite chaotic, and still a lot of tax issues. Second question was design thinking and lean startup. Now, there are 3 things I think, as also coming from a university, you need to start teaching very early. Critical thinking, design thinking, and lean startups, or lean methodology. Why? Design thinking comes because you're talking to a customer from a startup. If you're talking to your customer, then you will design your product around the customer. So design thinking happens, and it's customer-centric. After that, you will only do lean methodology because you're only building, it's a question of all features versus the important features of your product. If the customer says feature 1 is important, then that's the only thing you need to build. So lean methodology comes in. And finally, critical thinking, because as a founder, you need to get your ego out of your business. You have to be extremely objective and get to hear what customer is saying, and that's what you do. So that's the other thing I think it's extremely important for the university to teach.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
What a fascinating discussion, and thank you to Theodore Kluvas for his passion around the issues of youth, around startups, and the role the private sector has in engaging in sustainable development. Now, let's take a look at your views on the issues.
This week we asked you, how do we promote bottom-up entrepreneurship in emerging economies? John Kiarie says, Africa needs accelerated structural transformation in order to take the bulk of its population out of poverty.
I'm Catherine Kadambi, watching African Leadership Dialogue from Juja. Better working incubators should be put in place to ensure that the SMEs are well integrated in the public workforce.
To join our conversation, go to our G+ page, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Facebook, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Twitter, @AfricaLD, and on WhatsApp, send your video comments to +254 715 816 033.
Time now for Africa's Top 10.
On Africa's Top 10 this week, we feature the top young African entrepreneurs. Africa has the world's youngest and fastest growing population. Today, the continent is home to more than 200 million people between the ages of 15 and 24, and its young population is increasingly well educated. This growing cohort of young, skilled people is reflected in a wave of entrepreneurship that is transforming economies across Africa. This is according to CNN. Starting us off at number 10 is Fabrice Alomo from Cameroon. Fabrice Alomo's Maya Connect aims to help small businesses in Africa to reach wider audiences and sell online. The company's e-money payment solution allows customers to buy local goods even without a bank card or account. Coming in at number 9 is George Mtemahanji from Tanzania. George is working to solve Tanzania's rural energy shortages through his startup SunSuite Solar. The company imports solar photovoltaic products from Europe and builds affordable small-scale power plants for homes and businesses. Positioned at number 8 is Vanessa Zomi from Cameroon. Zomi started Emerald Moringa Tea in Cameroon's Buea region when she was just 17. The company processes moringa, a local plant, into a healthy tea that aids digestion. Taking the number 7 spot is Mabel Suglo from Ghana. Social entrepreneur Mabel Suglo's Eco Shoes project employs artisans with disabilities to manufacture shoes from recycled tires and textiles, creating employment and providing a sustainable market for waste products. Slotting in at number 6 is Chris Kwekowe from Nigeria. Chris launched Slate Club in 2014, a platform that helps students develop industry skills through a series of self-paced online courses, field trips, boot camps, and virtual internship programs built in partnership with schools and organizations. At number 5 is Daniel Mukisa from Uganda. Daniel co-founded Transporter Corporation, a Kampala-based motorbike delivery service. As e-commerce becomes increasingly popular in Uganda, Mukisa hopes Transporter Corporation will give vendors a cost-effective way to navigate Kampala's congested roads. Chantal Bugare from Rwanda is number 4. Chantal launched her Kinazi Dairy Cooperative in 2014 to help Rwandan genocide survivors who had been given cows under a government assistance program but who were struggling to sell and market their milk. The initiative now serves more than 3,200 farmers and supplies markets in Rwanda and Burundi. Anchored in at number 3 is Caridas Chincholo from South Africa. Caridas launched Push Ismokol Clothing as a social enterprise in 2011, employing 6 people to make t-shirts, caps and sweaters. The brand has been showcased on South African television and endorsed by a number of local authorities. Coming in at number 2 is Farai Munjoma from Zimbabwe. In 2014, Munjoma created Shasha is Seminar, an online education platform that provides an online library of course notes, past exam papers, and career guidance for high school students in Zimbabwe. Some of the revenue generated by the service is used to contribute to school fees for marginalized rural students. At number 1 this week, we have Sirjef Dennis from Tanzania. Dennis hopes to tackle malnourishment and poverty in rural Tanzania through poultry and vegetable farming. His company, Jeffren AgriFriend Solutions, rears and sells day-old chicks to communities for meat and egg production. And that's Africa's Top 10 this week.
As always, we end with words of wisdom, and our African proverb this week reads, "The words of the elders do not lock all the doors, they leave the right door open." Blessings to you and blessings.